Can I gloat for a second? Actually, maybe like 2,000 seconds if you've got a spare 30 minutes, because I was pretty dang right about the Nintendo Switch 2. I mean, you have to admit. Unless this is the first video you're watching from me, and then I'm just gonna sound very narcissistic. For the last 4 years, 4 months, and 4 days, I've been saying that the Nintendo Switch 2 will have 4K 60 FPS. And nobody believed me, man. So if you don't mind indulging me, I know I'm setting this up very flamboyantly. And trying to hedge the comments on me being a narcissist, but this is my whole career, and I would like to justify it. You know, let you guys know you haven't wasted the last several years watching me. Now, as I said, I have examples in this video that date back all the way 5 years, but if I can start just a little more recently than that, 1 year ago with my video, here is my perfect Nintendo Switch 2. 4K 60 FPS, no OLED screen, certain games will connect to phones for extra features, backwards compatibility, you'll be able to use the old Joy-Cons wirelessly, and it'll launch with Mario Kart 10. Now, I know this is a video, but I will pause for 1 second while you applause. Thank you. There was one thing that I didn't predict, and it was mouse mode, which is arguably the new gimmick this time. But I will say, once the mouse mode was revealed, I went to work pretty quickly making this video all about the mouse mode and ways that it would be implemented into its games. Also, thinking outside the box here, don't just think of it as a traditional mouse. This is Nintendo. I mean, we're probably gonna get all kinds of weird, wacky little mini games. Like, imagine the next Mario Party. I'm sure some of those mini games will utilize this mouse feature. There'll probably even be a whole separate mode in that game that uses only the mouse. This guy should make Nintendo videos. Even down to the mini game. I think if you compare that to some of the Welcome Tour mini games, it's pretty clear I knew what Nintendo were going to do and what they were thinking with that pack-in game. And maybe that pack-in game is kind of like Nintendo Land, and there's a mini game that uses the mouse. Maybe you swap flies again. And I did say it would be a pack-in game, so I guess you can scratch that. And yeah, I know, you might have noticed looking at that list, I did cherry pick most of it and I left off a couple of things. One being, I thought that Nintendo would have different kind of Joy-Cons that you can switch on and off. I'm still holding out hope for that. And then yeah, the other one was Super Nintendo Switch. I always thought that this console would be called Super Nintendo Switch, and unfortunately, I was right. Kinda. Oh, look at this. Apparently, Nintendo were considering calling it the Super Switch, but ultimately just didn't feel right. Yeah, but enough of me being technically wrong. Be gone, wrong. This video is supposed to be about me being right, isn't it? Hey, you wanna know a fun fact? You see this guy? Me and him, we ain't the same. I filmed this a month ago. This guy, he's got about 10 pounds more muscle, 10 pounds less fat, and 10 pounds a whole lot of less baby on him. Yeah, I'm a dad now. And since becoming a dad, I've realized that privacy is oh so important. I don't even know how companies get all your information, but they'll just list them on a ton of sites. It's also really hard to remove that information online yourself, but that's where Incogni comes in, and it's honestly a service that means a lot to me. Data brokers sell your information to these sites. That's why I started using Incogni, because on your behalf, they will seek out and find each one of these sites and request the removals for you, and they'll just get rid of it. And even if you're thinking like, I don't care if my information is out there, you know a huge benefit to getting rid of it? All those robocalls and spam texts. I don't know if this is an America specific thing, but until I started using Incogni, my phone would blow up daily. So getting rid of all your information online fixes that. And it's so easy to get set up. You just make an account, you allow Incogni to act on your behalf, and that's it. They will continuously scan the internet and remove your information as long as you have an account. They also just added the custom removals feature. So if you find your info on a random site that's not already in the system, you can just send them a link to that, and then their privacy experts will get to work getting that one taken down specifically. It's included in their ultimate plan. So do it now. Click the link below or use code BEATEMUPS to get 60% off an annual plan at Incogni. It also directly supports the channel, and I would appreciate it a lot. Because this guy, this fit, healthy, well-rested man, he has no idea what's coming, but I do. And now I need safety, privacy, and monetary help. So click the link below. Okay, I'm out. Bye. So let's focus on the big one first, the 4K 60 FPS. Going back to that December 10, 2020 video, it was me and my buddy RGT85. We jumped into a call for a video to discuss NVIDIA's 4K upscaling capabilities.
The NVIDIA Shield TV Pro is capable of upscaling things to up to 4K, which is a device that
I've never heard this before. Oh yeah, we had to record this video twice because I forgot to hit record the first time.
Is a device that released in 2019 that utilizes the same chip that's inside of the Nintendo Switch. And NVIDIA currently is doing DLSS technology, which essentially allows for artificial intelligence to upscale images, improve pixel quality, improve resolutions, improve clarity of these things as well.
That was the catalyst right there when Sean and I came up with this harebrained idea that because the Switch already used NVIDIA and NVIDIA had already started doing AI upscaling, that it was a no-brainer that the next Switch could do that too. But as the years went on, this idea didn't leave me. It was obvious Nintendo's next handheld, whatever it would be, would utilize this technology. I want to say almost 3 years since I had a conversation with Sean from RGT on my channel about what Nintendo might do with their next console. And there were leaks surrounding a certain chipset from NVIDIA or technology that's already technically available right now with the NVIDIA Shield.
That would be DLSS.
Yeah, where it can artificially upscale to 4K, which is what we would most likely be looking at with the Switch 2. Another good example of where a lot of my talking points and ideas solidified was on my podcast in September of 2023. There was a big leak that at Gamescom that year, Nintendo brought the Switch 2 behind the scenes where only industry insiders could see, and it was running Breath of the Wild and Final Fantasy VII in 4K 60 frames. I believed this 100%. Getting a game like Breath of the Wild in 4K 60 would really show off how much of an upgrade this console is because you have a direct comparison. But on top of that, getting something like Final Fantasy VII and being able to compare that to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 will once again show off what the Switch 2 is capable of. Even Scott the Woz, I don't know why I said even Scott the Woz. Scott the Woz is pretty smart. Even Scott the Woz agreed with me at the start of 2024 when we sat down to do our Nintendo predictions. Because the new Switch will be 4K 120 frames, of course.
Of course, yeah.
But I still had doubters. Not everybody was drinking the beat-em-ups cult Kool-Aid. Even Tim Geddes. Yes! Didn't want to hear a word of it from this guy. I'm going to say this right now. There's no shot the next Mario Kart isn't 4K 60.
So I think you're crazy to say that.
That's a good one. That's my favorite. That's my favorite one. That's my favorite one. This is how most people acted when I brought this up, and the comment section agreed with him. Actually, the comment section got annoyed at me because I wouldn't let this go.
I'm not worried about it not looking
in 4K
amazing
60?
and running. 4K 60? No, man. No. It's just not happening. I just don't. Nah. 4K 30? Sure.
Okay. Again, I loved him, and the comments always echoed. Every time I brought this up, it was the same story. On the topic of 4K, because I talked about this so much, people often asked me how that would work with older games. So here's another clip from my podcast from a year or so ago. But also, what if they did what I think The Last of Us did? I might be wrong here. Where if you already have the base game, you can upgrade for $10, and you can get the remastered. You just put in your old game, pay that $10 fee, you get access to the remaster.
That'd be fine.
That would be fine.
That'd be fine.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
It's funny now because when I saw you had to pay for it at launch, I was kind of bummed out. I guess I have no right to complain about that anymore. All right, so moving on from the 4K a little. In this clip, I talk about my Mario Kart theory. I have this theory that the new Mario Kart's the launch game for the next Switch.
That's not a bad theory.
And now imagine we get a new Mario Kart, but same day we get Breath of the Wild remastered and it's in 4K 60.
That is a big possibility.
Thanks for believing in me, Bob. Love you, buddy. On the second ever episode of my Nintendo podcast, a full 3 years ago, other than Odyssey 2, which is that is what's happening, Mario Kart 9 could be the thing that it launches
Mario
with.
Kart 9 is definitely a thing for the next console.
Now, to be fair, around this time, I was still trying to decide whether the next 3D Mario or the next Mario Kart would be the launch title. And I kind of held both in my heart for a year or so. But as the next couple of years went on and we ended up getting Mario Wonder, it became apparent to me that it had been too long since a Mario Kart. But more than any of that, I had this theory about multiplayer on launch, which I broke down in the Here's My Perfect Switch video. And on top of that even, it's heckin' multiplayer. It's already doing well, right? Everyone's already buying it, and then other people that haven't bought it, they see their friends have it. Their friends are playing Mario Kart, and they're like, I want to play with you guys. I want to play too, so they buy it. Twitch streamers all playing together and streaming it together. You know, it's gonna create all of this buzz and all of this hype, this free promotion. It's even more clear now with Game Chat and Nintendo wanting to build this ecosystem and this community around people playing that Mario Kart was always going to be that launch title. I always knew that the Mario Kart title had to go somewhere grander. It couldn't just be Mario Kart 9 on Nintendo Switch 2. Those numbers just clash and it's not very exciting.
I think it's Mario Kart 10 or Mario Kart Rainbow Road, Mario Kart Infinity,
something new,
Mario Kart Ultimate. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
9 is so underwhelming.
It's underwhelming. It's an underwhelming number. I think it needs to be Mario Kart 10, Mario Kart Infinity.
So while I threw out a bunch of ideas here, it wasn't until 2 months before the official title of the game was revealed where I said this.
The Mario Kart world.
Show me anybody else that predicted it would be called Mario Kart World. And I'm also lying. This was completely out of context. I just happened to say the title of the game, and I wasn't meaning to.
Maybe that's like where you pull in to activate a minigame or to like load into the Mario Kart world.
It could be to...
I don't know.
We were so close to that one. I literally accidentally said it. A lot of other people leading up to the Switch 2 reveal thought that Metroid would be the launch title. I never thought that would be the case. I found it very unlikely. And I think the moment that I realized this is when someone just asked me to my face.
So you know this. When is Metroid Prime 4 coming out?
I think it's a next.
I think it's next gen.
Nintendo console.
I think it's next gen. We haven't heard about it in so long. They did the same thing with Breath of the Wild, where it just kind of went silent for a while, and then it's like, it's gonna be on the new thing now.
I think it'll be a few months into the new thing. I don't even think it'll be a launch
I don't think
title.
it'll be launch.
Now, I wouldn't be proud of this very basic prediction at all if it wasn't for the fact that I did actually get a lot of pushback for not thinking that Metroid was a day one release. Like this clip from 9 months ago.
What might happen is the Switch might come out mid-year next year with whatever game it comes out with, and then Metroid is like an October sort of October release.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's backwards compat, it's on Switch, and it's on Switch too.
I did say October, which would be cool if it ends up being October. For now, we just know it's later in the year. But that was my point. Metroid isn't as big of an IP as it seems. I mean, Max on the podcast immediately hit me with what a lot of people say when I bring this up.
I think it could be a system.
Dread did not do that well.
I also think they're going to do a console.
Dread did well for a Metroid game. It only sold 3 million copies.
Yeah, and that's not in any way shaming Metroid Dread. That game is incredible, but it definitely has a niche following than a big blockbuster title like Mario Kart. And sure, Metroid Prime 4 will probably be the best Metroid we've ever had, and I hope that it sees some serious numbers. But it's just not something you want to risk a big launch on.
All of the new Switch 2 games that they're going to announce on April 2nd, which I'm basically 100% sure a 3D Mario is going to... They always have 3D Mario in the first year. At least they have for so many years.
I mean, Arlo and I were on ball here, except it wasn't a 3D Mario. It was Donkey Kong, which is close enough. People are calling this Donkey Kong game the Mario Odyssey of Donkey Kong, and it's clear that they wanted to do this to coincide with the park opening up. Going back to that Scott episode, we said this.
There's the question of if it's going to be backwards compatible.
How do you feel about that? Backwards
I think
compatible?
it's going to be backwards compatible.
You do?
Yeah.
And I gotta be honest that this was one that I came pretty close on being wrong about. Because for a few years before this clip with Scott, I would have multiple arguments with Bob on the podcast about why I felt like it wouldn't be backwards compatible.
People already have a Switch. There's no real reason to upgrade. It gets confusing again, and then you fall back into a same situation, the exact same situation the Wii U had. Yeah, it was backwards compat day one, all the Wii games. You had a virtual console. But you know what happened because of that? Nobody bought new games. So no third-party companies were willing to support the console because everyone was buying Earthbound for the 50,000th time. And then we had a failed console, and then Nintendo comes out with the Switch, a whole new thing, starting from scratch, 7 games at launch, and it's the most successful console of all time. Do you really want to F that up by doing a Wii U 2? That's kind of where I'm at. I kind of figured that Nintendo would learn from their mistakes and not do that again. But the reality was that it was looking like I wasn't going to be right. And with the help of Bob in this podcast in August, it was the final time I had this conversation with him, and he really changed my mind.
So you called the Switch the most successful system of all time?
Well,
the actual most successful system of all time is the PlayStation 2. And that can play PlayStation 1 games.
That's a good point. So I do have to credit Bob for that one. So about that OLED screen that everybody wanted so badly. The screen. Oh boy. It's gonna be really hard to say goodbye to OLED, but say goodbye to OLED we're probably gonna have to do. I mean, it added $50 to the Switch, and Nintendo knows that $50 is make or break for a lot of consumers. To be honest though, I'm okay with it. Next to the 4K 60 of it all, this was the biggest fight I had to fight leading up to the Switch 2 launch, that it wouldn't have an OLED screen. The public's fixation on an OLED screen, like, I understand it because Nintendo themselves set that precedent that the better Switch 1 had an OLED screen. Even the Steam Deck copied in their footsteps and upgraded the Steam Deck with an OLED screen. So why would anybody want to go back to LCD? Well, as I tried to explain time and time again, a quality LCD screen can look better than a low-quality OLED screen. Here's a clip from my podcast where Ham and the chat watching were turning against me as I was trying to explain.
See, someone in chat though just said that like, isn't LCD just old technology at this point? And I agree. Like, yeah. It's just kind of like,
yeah. I mean, by definition, yes, it's older technology, but it's cheaper. If I'm wrong, I'm happy. I'll be happy to be wrong on that one. Well, I wasn't wrong, and I'm still happy, actually, because the new screen's just as nice. By the way, speaking of the HDR, the 120 hertz, the apparently native 4K, even the DLSS, and I don't know if you've heard this, but apparently the Switch 2 can do ray tracing. It has ray tracing capabilities. I mean, all of this was well and above what I expected and really good to have. So imagine if they didn't have those things also. My point is that I'm trying to get to is this clip. Oh, the price.
Oh, yeah, the price. That's important.
So I think actually someone did leak the price. Oh. Or at least the rumor is $400. Yeah, we're talking about the price. So I always thought it was going to be $400. And yeah, I was wrong. But it's also because I didn't expect it to have all these other things, which definitely brought the price up. So let's go back to that video I did a year ago of building my perfect Switch 2, because there's a lot in here we can still juice. It'd be so goofy, but if there was a little camera on the console and it like had your face in it and you could stream your face and your gameplay directly from the handheld tablet. I mean, should we talk about it, or do you just want to move on and count it as a dub? To be fair, the reason why I want to move on and count it as a dub is because I immediately turn around and say, I got all the way here to say that's not gonna happen though. It's funny because I was right there. I had the thought. It's what made sense. And then I changed my mind last second. And the reason why I did is because I never thought Nintendo would put a camera on the Switch 2. It seems too much like a Wii U happening all over again, and it's an added cost. And I guess in a way I was right. It's just that I never expected Nintendo to pull a Kinect 2 on us and have a separate standalone camera. Never would have guessed that in 1,000 years because it's kind of dumb, and I still think it's a bit dumb. Let's hope and pray that Nintendo doesn't utilize a mobile app when it comes to in-game functions like voice chat. Oh, yay, Nintendo! You finally figured it out! We don't want to use the stupid app! I mean, this goes hand in hand with my idea about having some kind of local game chat on the system. I really thought they would do away with the app. But then my brain thought,
what would happen with the app. That said, I do think there are uses in having connectivity with a phone. The idea of the Switch is to take it everywhere with you. The only other device you take everywhere with you is your phone. There's no reason why the two of them shouldn't interact in some way. Imagine if the steps that you take on your phone, you could upload that to your Switch and use it to hatch eggs in the new Pokemon game, or just other practical uses in general. There's definitely ways that these two can connect. Oh, that's pretty good. I mean, that's what is happening in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. What was my example? Like a GPS type egg hatching scenario, which might still happen, but what do we have in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom? A GPS! It's a little different, but yeah, my point, that was my point. I'm sure whatever they do with Joy-Cons, they will most likely be improved in ways that will help even further with immersion. Better HD rumble, maybe some PlayStation 5 haptic feedback ideas, maybe they have magnets in them. Oh, I got like 3 in the span of 10 seconds right there. 4 months ago, I was making a video predicting what the Switch 2's launch lineup of games would be. And then when I got to editing the thumbnail, I thought to myself, well, the cases will probably look different. And then it hit me. Well, they'd probably be red. So I took a gamble and I made the Switch 2 cases red in my thumbnail. And I mean, the boy can't miss. Also, if we could talk about the actual video, here's what I said about Elden Ring. So to launch the Switch 2 with Elden Ring feels like such a full circle moment, but also signals to all the elitist PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox graphic focused gamers, hey, the Switch now has Elden Ring. It goes without saying, I think, that anything that's Steam Deck verified at this point should be able to run on the Switch 2. I think it's insane to think that the Switch 2 wouldn't be able to do at the very minimum what the Steam Deck can do. And now we know Elden Ring is coming to the Switch. And then here's what I said about Cyberpunk. Putting it on Switch 2, it's a statement. I have some handheld PCs that are $1,000 to buy that can't run Cyberpunk very well. But if it had some kind of playable version of the game on Switch 2 at launch, you're just signaling to all third-party developers, to all consumers and possible Nintendo fans, gamers that haven't picked up a Switch because it's an underpowered little kiddie system. No, it's not. If it can play Cyberpunk, it can do anything. That game is optimized like spaghetti. And that is exactly what is happening. I knew this would be a game that would showcase what the Switch could do, and it would get people talking. And sure enough, this is one of the main games that people are doing comparisons online. And the fact that it has all the DLC and the PlayStation 4 version notoriously doesn't because it couldn't handle it is a great talking point when it comes to the Switch 2's power and what the console can actually do. In fact, talking about these games and third-party support on the Switch in general, something I've been talking about for the last couple of years is how the Switch 2 will have insane third-party support at launch. And here in this video called Why Nintendo is the Best Gaming Company, yes, I'm a shill. Anyway, I say this. There are so many reports of third-party developers that regret not making games for the Switch earlier, thinking it was going to be another Wii U situation. But just like an ex-girlfriend who noticed on Instagram that we lost a ton of weight post-breakup and got kind of buff, they've come crawling back with their tail between their legs, promising if we just take them back, they're gonna give us so many new fun experiences on the Switch 2, and they'll never leave us again for Barrett. So not only was all of that on point, but even if you look at the developers and publishers in the background while I'm talking, we had Activision, who were in that big hour-long Nintendo Switch 2 Direct with Tony Hawk. EA, who also showed up day one in that big Direct. Even Microsoft, okay, Microsoft weren't in the big Direct, but give it time. But what about the system's actual power? It's all well and good to say 4K 60, but how does the console stack up against PlayStation or Steam Deck? And I had a lot of thoughts on that over the years.
It could be as powerful as like the base Steam Deck, and it would be more than enough for it to get by.
I don't know if we're gonna get that much power.
I'm hoping that we get a little more. With the Switch 2, they really worked with NVIDIA, and they had a special chip designed for their console, which you could do more with that than just trying to build a mini PC with a screen, which is what a lot of these companies like ROG Ally and everything do. I might be talking out my ass a little bit on that one, on that last point that I made, but I don't think I'm too far off.
But I wasn't. It made sense that we move up to PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. I mean, mean that's where the Steam Deck is at. But this is Nintendo. They have access to Nvidia. They have access to technology and money and resources, and the Steam Deck released 3 years ago. So by the time it got to late last year, early this year, my expectation was already moving past PlayStation 4. Rumors are Nintendo's next console is gonna square up pretty nicely against the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One X, and that's more than enough, especially when you consider Nintendo's own first-party IPs. I mean, Mario, Zelda, Metroid. You're telling me we could get new games in those franchises running on a handheld console that has the same level of power as a console that produced Last of Us? So if the Switch 2 has the power of a PlayStation 4 and Xbox One X, and maybe even has a graphics chip specifically designed by Nvidia for Nintendo, yeah, there is a good chance we can see some well-optimized games really utilizing the hardware here. I'm making this video and I feel like it's getting silly to keep watching these clips and turning around and feeling like I have to say something like, see? Now, if you'll humor me one last time with something I've already talked about, and the conversation around whether or not the Switch has the power of the PlayStation 4 and if that's a good thing or a bad thing is running rampant. But that shouldn't mean that we can just say things that aren't true about the Switch itself. If you see somebody online trying to tell you that if the Switch 2 has the power of a PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 4 Pro, and that means it'll have low performance or just straight up won't have certain video games, they are wrong. I said that 2 months ago, and that advice couldn't be more accurate now. Because here is what people really aren't understanding when places like Digital Foundry say that the Switch 2 has the power of the PlayStation 4. It's what you can do with that power now. And it's also portable. Even if we were limited to the PlayStation 4's power and what it did in its lifetime, in its time, that's still really good for a handheld. But my point stands that what we can do now with the PlayStation 4's hardware is a lot more than we could then, which is why we can have Cyberpunk and all its DLC on the system. It's why Final Fantasy VII is stacking up closer to the PlayStation 5 version than the PlayStation 4's, because game developers have learned to optimize better for hardware. And also, this Switch 2 might be easier to work with its raw power than the PlayStation 4. It's nice now to go back to almost any of these videos, but specifically the ones that are obviously predicting Switch 2 stuff on my channel, flicking the comments to new and seeing people realize that maybe I was cooking. And I'm proud as hell of all of that content that I made, the coverage that I did on the podcast over the last few years, and the thoughts that I've put out there into the marketplace of ideas, which is really why I wanted to make this video. And I do want to stress, while I had the grand scheme picture mapped out in my brain, that doesn't mean there weren't things that I was wrong about. And I feel like I tried to mention most of those in this video, like I was wrong on backwards compatible for a long time. I never thought of HDR 120 frames. I never could have guessed mouse mode. Other than those things, I don't think I was taking any wild shots in the dark that didn't end up happening. But if there was something, you can let me know below. Trust me, after everything I've said today, I probably need to be brought down a couple of pegs. I'm gonna go. I don't know why I made this video. I feel weird. Like, comment, and subscribe.